The Simpson Desert is defined by a vast area of neat rows of parallel sand dunes. The distances between these sand dunes ranges from 200 meters to 1 kilometer. Occasionally, however, a desolate plain stretches to the horizon between these sand hills. We are on one of these plains, following a track that seems to aim at infinity. Fluffy clouds litter the sky, leftover of a rain band that moved through 2 days ago. Then trees appear on the horizon. Isolated in this plain at the western edge of the Simpson Desert grow some of the world's rarest trees. They are acacia puce, also known as waddy trees. Only 3 stands, including this in the McClark Acacia Puce Reserve, are known to exist in Australia. Slim and tall, these slow-growing trees are thought to be a leftover from the last ice age, surviving ever since in the harsh environment of the Simpson Desert. These are strange trees, misleading the uninitiated with their weeping, willowy appearance. There's nothing soft about them. The leaves are needle-like and very prickly. The McClark Acacia Puce Reserve is one of the territory's many lesser-known attractions. It can be found along a driving route called the Bins Track. Together with my companion Barry, I'm out here exploring this four-wheel drive track on assignment for Australian Geographic magazine. The Bins Track is an epic, over 2,200 kilometre long outback driving route. The four-wheel drive adventure starts in Mount Dare, 150 kilometres south of the McClark Acacia Puce Reserve. Mount Dare is an outback pub within the arid Witjira National Park in South Australia, just a few kilometres south of the border to the Northern Territory. They offer services essential for roaming the surrounding deserts and of course the Bins Track. And they don't just look after humans. The day we leave Mount Dare, the desolate plains leading to the border and beyond are cloaked in an eerie mist. After only 14 kilometres we reach the border to the Northern Territory. Treeless plains alternate with heavily vegetated sections on the very southern part of the Bins Track. By the time we reach the Finke River, the sun has burned away the mist. We are where this ancient river, believed to be the oldest river on the planet, peters out in the vastness of the western edge of the Simpson Desert. The sand dunes beyond the river are covered in annual yellowtop and poached egg daisies. Close up, the Simpson Desert seduces with soft beauty and projects a sense of civility. From up high, however, this notion vanishes. Remoteness becomes visible, and for me, who still sometimes see this from a European perspective, this is thrilling but also sobering. Out here, we are reduced to insignificant specks in an intimidating vastness, relying on modern technology to survive. We are on the way to one of the historic highlights along the southern section of the Bins Track, Old Andado Station. The Old Andado homestead is physical evidence of the establishment of pastoral activities on the edge of the Simpson Desert in the second decade of the 20th century. The last occupant of this homestead was Molly Clark. Preserved inside the ramshackle building is her home. It still seems occupied by her. Only the silence and the thin coat of fine red desert dust are pointers that this is a time capsule, a relic of a bygone era. The Bins Track is named after Bill Bins, a ranger who worked with Northern Territory Parks and Wildlife for 32 years. His vision and dream was to make some of the lesser known attractions of the territory accessible to adventurous visitors. North of Old Andado, the Bins Track traverses through vast sandhill country. The Simpson Desert, an arid zone larger than Tasmania and considered the youngest and largest parallel sand dune desert in the world, is still dominating the scenery. After recent rains, a rich bouquet of wildflowers is on display, with pink everlasting daisies and masses of poached egg daisies. With the sun now nearing the horizon, it is time to pick a suitable campsite for the night. There are many well-placed campsites all along the Binns track. Sometimes, however, it becomes necessary to pitch your tent in between. A cluster of mulga trees along the track, backed by a sizable sand dune, gets our nod. Our four-wheel drive vehicle is equipped with spacious tents, a fridge and a gas stove. This makes us self-sufficient for the long journey. For Barry to cook up a storm out here in the isolation of the Simpson Desert is easy. Wildflowers remain a theme the next morning. Especially on Aboriginal controlled land without grazing, nature shows its full glory. After the desert come the mountains. With the appearance of the first hill, the Binns track now has reached the Central Ranges, and a new chapter of the Binns track begins. Over its course, this four-wheel drive route traverses the Northern Territory from the very south to its far northwest corner. Besides climatically leading from the desert into the tropics, the driving route also runs through very distinct landscapes. The Central Ranges, an ancient arid landscape dominated by rugged quartzite ranges, dissected by dramatic chasms and gorges, form the next stage of the Binns track. Within these ranges lie some of the most memorable highlights of the Binns track. There's the Aboriginal mission of Santa Theresa with its fascinating Catholic church. Santa Teresa's citizens identify as Indigenous Catholics. Much closer to Alice Springs are the East MacDonnell Ranges with Emily and Jessie Gaps. Further east along these ranges is the much lesser known Gorge National Park. Ancient history is the attraction here. Almost 6,000 individual Aboriginal rock carvings have been registered in the park. These petroglyphs are faint in most cases, worn by time and weather. It is also a beautiful and peaceful place. There's still water in sections of the creek when we walk into the gorge, wildflower blossom, the smell of dew on dry grass and a whiff of honey wafts through the still air. The Andoulia wattle, a rare acacia found only in small isolated stands around here, is in full bloom. History, embedded in stunning scenery, now shifts from ancient to more current. Within the Central Ranges lies the historic gold mining town of Arltunga, Central Australia's first town. Some of the buildings, the Arltunga police station and the lockup, have been renovated and stand as a testimony to the gold rush that began in 1887 when traces of gold were found in creeks nearby. Soon after the first alluvial gold was found, prospectors discovered veins of gold-bearing quartz in the White Range. The Great Western Mine at the foot of the range is testimony to that. A short walk leads us to the mine that over its 11 years produced a total of 18.6 kilograms of gold. For that, 2,000 tons of quartz rock was removed from the mine. The Great Western Mine was the second most productive mine in the field. Predating gold, however, was a rush of prospectors heading to Ruby Gap some 40 kilometers east of Arltunga. And this is where we are headed now. The track down to Ruby Gap is a very scenic side trip from the Bins track. It follows where early prospectors walked in the hope of finding valuable rubies. At the beginning, the track offers little four-wheel drive challenges. That changes when we reach the sandy bed of the Hale River. From now on, it's strictly four-wheel drive and lowered tyre pressure is essential. Follow the advice from NT Parks and Wildlife. High clearance four-wheel drive only. But look at the scenery. We can't help to feel a sense of achievement reaching this remote nature reserve. By the time we established camp, it is already late afternoon. In the early morning, with the sun still hiding below the surrounding hills, we walk into Glen Annie Gorge. It is here in this glorious landscape where the dream of riches was short-lived. The red crystals found in the riverbed of the Hale River turned out to be semi-precious garnets. We, however, struck it rich when nature switched the lights on. After late breakfast, it is time to leave this jewel of the Central Ranges and negotiate once more the bed of the Hale River. Once back on the Bins track, the mood of this four-wheel drive route changes again. We now drive through open cattle country and the ranges retreat into the background. The topic of mineral riches, however, stays. We detour to the mud tank Zircon field, the largest deposit of zircon in the world. A big water-filled open pit is testimony to the commercial mining of the mineral that once took place here. If you want to have a go at fossicking for gemstones, nearby Gemtree, a caravan park, organises tag-along tours to the gem field. Let's now jump 180 kilometers ahead to MacDonnell's Downs. Rising out of the flat station land are hills composed of large rounded granite boulders, as if a playful giant has collected these rocks and left them in big piles. This is the Mac and Rose Chalmers Conservation Reserve, also known as Tower Rock, a 470 hectare private reserve. These devil marbles on steroids are another one of the many hidden and relatively unknown natural gems along the Bins track. The reserve is also the burial ground for the Chalmers family. A flora and fauna survey undertaken by National Parks also confirmed the conservation values of the Tower Rock area. We are leaving the Mac and Rose Chalmers Conservation Reserve and MacDonnell's Downs to continue along the Binns track. This is the start to one of the longest days on the Binns track, as we are planning to go all the way to the Davenport National Park. There are very limited opportunities for a camp along the way until this reserve is reached. Along the stretch between Tower Rock and Davenport National Park, the sense of remoteness and isolation is now a steady companion. That intensifies even further on the rough track that bypasses Derry Downs. This bypass, another test for us, is rough, alternating between sandy creek crossings and rocky passages. In places, the bypass consists of only two sandy ruts bordered by blue mallee and spinifex. A short stretch along the wide Andover Highway gives a reprieve to the drivers before heading north again towards Murray Downs. This part of the Binns track allows for reasonable speed until the track towards Hatches Creek turns off. The track becomes rocky now, the travel speed slows right down. We have reached the southern extremity of the Davenport Ranges. Water becomes the feature here. The picturesque Arltunga waterhole, right next to the track, warrants a stop. Driving along these remote tracks demands concentration. Conditions constantly change, you never know what awaits around the next corner. Lizards often bask in the middle of the track, soaking up the sun, like this beautiful blue-tongued lizard. Then the head frame of the pioneer Wolfram mine appears. The mine was shut down in the 1970s. A steel head frame, ore bins, a raised tank, processing equipment, as well as shafts, shallow open cuts and ore piles remain. Now we enter the Davenport National Park proper. Protected within the borders of this 1,120 square kilometre large nature reserve are the water-rich Davenport Ranges. They form a transition zone between the arid southern Northern Territory and the higher rainfall country to the north, creating an important refuge for fauna and flora. Camp is at the old police station waterhole, one of the many waterholes along the Frew River. River gums form a riparian corridor along its banks. This is one of the most beautiful campsites in the park, with large individual sites. The waterhole itself is a haven for bird watchers. Out of the park, the Binns track, for a while at least, heads east to west. We cross the Frew River once more and water is again a feature along this stretch. Then, after 163 dusty road kilometres west of the delightful old police station waterhole, things change dramatically. It is now time to increase tyre pressure to adjust to a new surface: bitumen. The Binns track has reached the sealed Stewart Highway. Here, bitumen replaces dirt. The sense of remoteness fades. A short detour to the Devil's Marbles just 27 kilometers south bring home the new reality. Thanks to the proximity to the Stewart Highway, travellers along the Beans Track now have to share this extraordinary collection of large granite boulders with the many travellers along this major traffic artery. Described as a living cultural landscape, most of the park is registered as a sacred site. Cultural sensitivities and great popularity have led to a number of restrictions. Some rock formations can't be photographed, the rocks should not be climbed, and visitors are asked to stay on walking tracks. An early morning walk amongst the boulders, however, is bound to give you a memorable experience. Then we turn north again. The distance from the Devil's Marbles to the beginning of the Buchanan Highway is almost 460 kilometers along the sealed Stewart Highway. On the way north, we stop at the historic Tennant Creek Telegraph Station, just 16 kilometers north of Tennant Creek. Part of the 3,600 kilometer long overland telegraph line, which connected Darwin to Adelaide and was Australia's first telegraphic link to Britain, it also operated as a government rations depot. Another interesting interruption of the somewhat monotonous drive north is Newcastle Waters. Newcastle Waters is a stretch of semi-permanent waterholes and is located 282 kilometers north of Tennant Creek. The historic township nearby is part of the vast historic Newcastle Waters Station in the Barkly Tablelands. The small township thrived as a supply point at the junction of major droving routes. The introduction of the road train in the 1960s, however, rendered droving obsolete, and Newcastle Waters quickly became a ghost town and is no longer inhabited. Several buildings have been preserved by the National Trust. In the nearby Memorial Park stands a life-sized bronze statue of a drover, as a reminder of the times when drovers were moving cattle back and forth along established stock routes. From Newcastle Waters to where the Buchanan Highway branches off is another 88 kilometres along the Stewart Highway. Then we are back on dirt. The direction of travel is now due west. Attractions are sparse along the Buchanan Highway, but we again feel the freedom and excitement of the Beans Track. Along this part of the route, the crossing of the Victoria River is a highlight before reaching Victoria River Downs. Past the last cattle station, the adventure notches up again. Along the Humbert track, we drive into Gregory National Park, the grand finale of the Beans Track. This is again four-wheel drive territory. Gregory National Park is the territory's second largest national park. Despite its size, little is known about this park. The signature tree in the park is the boab. Along the Humbert track, we come past whole forests of these grey giants. Our destination for today is the historic Witjira Outstation. The station sits on the banks of the East Baines River that forms a magnificent waterhole here. Fringed by pandani, paperbark and eucalypts, this waterhole might be very tempting for a swim. Don't. Almost all waterholes in the park are crocodile territory. We check out the outstation and the adjacent yards before driving into the nearby campsite. With the sun nearing the horizon, Barry once more shows his cooking skills. For those who wonder, on the menu for tonight are tortellini with chorizo, olives and feta. After sunset, we walk to the edge of the East Bain River. With the searing sun and the heat gone, this is the quiet time of the day. As tempting as it may be to wash off the sweat and dust of the day, this stays a dream. Until the next day. From Witjira we drive to the Limestone Creek area and find a paradise. Tufa dams form shallow, croc-free pools filled with cool, clear water. These pools may well be the only safe swimming spots in the park. And this is a perfect finale. One that will stay in our memories for a long time. Roughly 55 kilometers from here is Timber Creek. This is where the Binns Track, one of Australia's great outback driving adventures, ends.